Hi guys, welcome back to the shop. This is Jim. Couple little tips or quick update here for you. I'm working on the stiffeners for the horizontal stabilizer front spar, and they've got a little taper on the end of them, which I'm going to get to in a minute. Show you how I did that on the mill. And if anybody's watching this who is building an RV and you see stuff that you did differently or you got questions, I'd love to hear how everybody else is doing this. I think it could be done pretty easily on the bandsaw. I actually tried using the snips to trim off that, and you can do that, but it's really stiff. It's a tough material. It's thick. I think that's 1/8 inch, maybe not quite, but hard to do with the snips. It's just a little too thick for that. So sawing it on the bandsaw would be good, and I just decided to mill it. I was kind of trying different things, and I didn't want to sand off all that material because you can see here that the taper was the same thickness, that 3/4 inch. It was just 3/4 inch angle that they formed. And so I did it on the mill. I'll show you that in a second. But what I wanted to really show you was I just decided to, instead of using vice grip clamps, which that works too, you probably could use a piece of scrap wood and then clamp it down from the back side. But you need to hold this thing to clean it up and file on it. So these are little toe clamps that I actually made quite a while ago on the mill, and they're made out of steel, which wouldn't even have to be steel, but that works pretty good for this case. But they go with this, geez, I'm rambling, aren't I? They go with this little thing here called a mini pallet, and you can kind of see underneath of there that milled slot in there. That's so that this whole thing can set down into the vise on the top of the mill, and then you can put real small parts on here and clamp them down with these toe clamps. There should be another bolt through the back here to lift the heel up to put pressure on it, and it keeps it up. It's just so that the geometry works, and then you can clamp it down and tighten it with that screw. And that's what I'm doing here. I just drilled a couple of holes, really tight fit for the number, I think those are number 8 screws. Drilled a tight hole, and then I just threaded them in there with the Allen wrench. And then after I did a couple of these filing off the edges, then I took the screws back out and I put a couple of drops of CA in the hole just to harden up the threads, because I may try to use these for other things. And then when the hole strips out in the MDF tabletop, I will just put a little pal nut underneath to take care of that. But I thought I'd show you that, and then let's go over here to the mill and I'll show you how I did the taper on those. I just took the mill vise. It was trimmed to square, but since of course that taper is not square, you can kind of see there I took the bolt out of that side, and both sides loosened them up, twisted that thing until it was at the right angle. And then the neat thing about it was I didn't have to actually do the layout line on there, because Vans puts the notch on those angles for you. And so then I just lined up the edge of the end mill at the 2 notches and traveled the table back and forth to make sure that it was tracking properly along from one notch to the other notch, and just milled it. I think you could do the same thing on the bandsaw just by cutting a triangular piece of a wedge. Your wedge would kind of be at an angle, and then you'd somehow clamp the angle to that wedge and make it big enough. Probably put a slot in a wider wedge, put a slot in the middle of it, and so you can push it down in there. Anyway, that's where I'm saying if you guys are working on the project like this, 14 or a 10 or even probably the 8, a lot of this stuff is similar, I'm sure, and you do it differently, leave a note in the comments, tell me how you're doing it, and I'd love to hear about it. I'm always wanting to learn stuff like this and expand my knowledge of kind of machining. This is one of the things with the machining world, the lathe and the mill, is work holding is the big deal. Once you figure out how to hold the work, the rest of it's pretty easy most of the time. So that's what I got going. You can see here, this is I've given you a shot of the quick build fuselage. I got a whole bunch of parts in the other day, and I can't hardly move around in the shop. It's so crowded out here. That's it. Sorry about the rambling video, but I'll see you next time.